Hello, my name is Carol Clark. I am the CTE Temps Grant Coordinator, and today I would like to talk to administrators about an administrator's CIP Self-Review. Now you may think there is no such thing, but I will tell you that when we're finished today, hopefully you'll know what that means. CTE Temps is all about solutions. Solutions to CTE education. So I hope you'll discover that this little video will work in that regard. And welcome. This is the MCCTE Navigator website. MCCTE stands for the Michigan Center for Career and Technical Education. I hope to navigate you through this somewhat, and I think the first thing that you will probably notice are the tabs at the top. So we're going to go over what's under some of those tabs, and you may even be surprised. In the upper left-hand corner, you are going to see a place for your email. After you put in your email, you will need a password. If you haven't signed in to Navigator before, you will need to register. You'll be asked a lot of questions that are very simple. It won't take you long, and then they will email you your password. You will not get it right there on the spot. So once you have your email and your password in, click Log In. Once you do that, a lot of things are open to you that were not prior to logging in. But I will tell you there are a lot of things that the public can get to that you can get to even if you misplace your password, which people often do. On the first page, you will see an area that's called How to Use Navigator. One of the things that our arrow is pointing to are instructions for operating building administrators. What I've done is I've actually opened up that document and pasted below, right about here, the beginning of those instructions. You will notice that there is actually a hot link right there to the login page and very specific instructions on how you as an operating building administrator should proceed in Navigator. It starts by telling you that the CPID administrators, and there are instructions for those as well, right above that, have to open up your ability to be able to work in Navigator with your teachers. Over to the right of that is a What's New area. It's very important that you check that on a regular basis because all of a sudden you'll see things like this biotechnology review and revision, brand new standards. If you don't know that, then you may go on assuming that the same standards for last year carry on to this year. There's also an insurance gap analysis. That's a brand new program, and now the gap analysis is out there. If you're going to start an insurance program, that's the perfect thing for you to get your hands on. Notice, though, that I have an arrow by the View More. And in just a moment, I'm going to show you what some of that View More is. Meanwhile, I did move over the general contact information from a little further over to the right on that page. And I want you to see that, first of all, there is an address, and there is a website for the Office of Career and Technical Education, and then the Navigator technical support. Very, very important that you see that and you understand that. There is a young man there whose name is Kavin. Let me spell that for you. Kavin, that you can ask for when you call. And he can tell you just about anything about Navigator that there is to do, and he can help you get done what you need to. And don't hesitate to call him. He's very polite. These standards and these documents are all under the What's New area that was labeled as More on the page before. And notice there are more than 8 pages here. So there are numerous things. The top one, which is right about here, is the Davenport University Statewide Articulation Agreement. Under that is the Ferris Statewide Articulation Agreement. So when you want to know about that and where to go to get that, here it is. And it goes on and on and on. The woodworking standards, welding, brazing, and soldering standards, machine tool, those are all things that went through review and revision. I also have another page, page 2, from that same What's New area, where it shows a lot of other standards. And I don't know if you can see those, but it talks about the date of the standards release very often. And it also talks about when things need to be implemented. For instance, the woodworking gap analysis, those standards need to be implemented by the fall of 2014. So that's important as well, because if you're going to be monitored that year, Wayne County, for instance, will be monitored this next year for what's going on this year. So if the teachers need to have new standards, it's important that they know and use the correct standards when they're doing their gap analysis. Another tab at the top of the page that is evident is called Schools. And when you touch that, My Schools and All Schools are listed. So if you clicked All Schools and you go down to the area that I have listed here that talks about schools, because I've pasted that in, you'll see that there are a whole list of schools starting with the first, Adlai Stevenson High School. The city is listed as well. So if I click on Adlai Stevenson High School, what I get is up here in the right hand corner. That's just where I've pasted it in. And for every school you will see the CIP, the name of the school, the address, city, state, and phone numbers, even fax numbers usually. And you also have here an email contact, and usually there's a web page as well. So now if you want to get a hold of any other administrator in any other school, it's an ideal place to go because this is updated every single year. Most things are not. So this is a very good resource for you as an administrator. Another tab at the top is called Programs. Under Programs is My Programs and All Programs. Usually you will want to click My Programs. When you click on My Programs, all the programs from your building that you have access to will be pulled up in a list. And if you click on one of those programs, this one is Computer Programming, note that one of the things that you will have access to are all the standards in the program. So as you click the little pluses that you see here, they will open up and you will see another set of standards. The ones that you will be most interested in, however, are the ones, twos, threes, the numbers. That is the performance element area, and those are the actual standards that your teachers are concerned about. Under this same tab is a segments report, and you can go to any of the programs that were listed, choose it, and I chose agriculture 1.0000 this time. I chose to list all of the standards, but you can choose from the different ones that are available. Perhaps you just want the technical standards. You can choose those. Or the cluster standards. You could choose those. Even the career-ready practices. So any of those or all of those are available for you to choose. Once you do that, then you choose which segment you want this from. So you'll choose. So I chose segments 1 through 6, and then I would hit the tab that says Generate at the bottom of this list, and it will give me a report, like I'm going to show you in the next slide. So this report begins with the technical standards, and notice over to the right you will see 1 through 3. Well, if the paper were a little wider, you would see that it actually goes 1 through 6. So all 6 segments are listed there. And then with each of the performance elements that is listed, it actually shows you which segments that particular standard are under. You'll notice that sometimes numbers were used, other times X's were used. There's a good reason for that. Essentially, what's going on is the ones we're interested in are the numbers over on the left. So next to those, if they're in those segments, they're just putting an X. The main area, which is classify, evaluate, select, and manage animals based on anatomical and physiological characteristics, they've actually used some numbers there. So you'll notice that's the difference here. At any rate, you can get a full segment report of where all of those standards are listed by doing the steps that we talked about in the previous slide. Under academics, you will be able to choose from several different academic areas. I've chosen math and I've chosen algebra, and this is under the Michigan Merit Mathematics. Then I hit the button that says Generate, and when I do that, I get math, 7th grade, and algebra, and I have a list. And you'll notice that's agriculture. In the technical standards, it tells which standard it is and what that standard says. So there's a very thorough math alignment to each of the program areas that's already done for you. So that should be a big head start to your teachers when they are trying to align their standards with the different academic areas. If you want to take that to your board to show them that this was what the state recommended and that these are the ones that your teacher can see will work with their program, that gives a little more weight to your ability to get academic credit for your CTE program. There is another tab at the top of the page called Resources, and this has many, many possibilities. First of all, under Resources, you'll see that there are how our children choose careers and why do I need English. Those are all posters. Then there is the CIP Self-Review. Now that CIP Self-Review is the newest one with only 6 major areas in it as opposed to the 18 that were in the CIP Self-Review over the last few years. That is a little deceiving, however, the minute I say it, because though there are only 6 major areas, several of the other areas that were in the C01 through C18 have been melded into some of those standard areas that are there. There is a document that we have on our website that's called the Teacher Timeline. And in the Teacher Timeline, we have shown which CO areas fall under which other CO areas so that it'll be easier for your teachers to be able to put those together when they're doing their CIP Self-Review. You will also see gap analysis documents here. And those are all the gap analysis documents in the Excel spreadsheet that you will find on this page. These are not the electronic gap analysis. We'll talk about those in a moment, but these are all of the other long form gap analyses where we have many, many more columns. What I wanted to point out to you, though, very specifically, is that there are lots of years, very often with the same CIP code. So notice under Natural Resources and Conservation Gap Analysis, there's a 2007. Right below that, there is another one that needs to be implemented by fall of 2013. So you need to go, by fall of 2014. You need to go with the most current consolidated version. Now some of them will say consolidated on them, some of them will not. Note that this one that's animal health specifically says consolidated gap analysis. So if you see 2 years that are the same and one says consolidated, please make sure that your teachers do the consolidated version. On this page, a little further down, is our instructional design form. This form is very important. We're going to talk about that a lot on the next slide. But right now I want to point out to you also that there are PowerPoints available here, and also some videos, in fact, that talk about the different standards that are released from each of the program areas, especially if they're new. So for instance, in construction, if we look at that PowerPoint, it's going to tell us all about that standards release, the date that it is good for and until, how it was done. For instance, the fact that business and industry came in, and so did the teachers, and what different standards they looked at in order to choose the ones that they chose, and how they ended up with the ones that they did. So the next time that your teacher gets a hold of some standards and says, how did they come up with these, as I certainly have heard, and you may have as well, you can actually have them go to the PowerPoint and tell them exactly how they chose those standards and why. This is the instructional design form. My teachers always call it the segment sheet. And indeed, that's what it is. First of all, this is a 1 year by semester sheet. And it always has a place for, first of all, the school, then the PSN. And by the way, the program serial number is found on Navigator under My Programs. So when they go there, they can find that number. They don't have to wait for you. The name of the program and the CIP code. The CIP code is in that same place as the PSN. Then there are directions to identify which segments are delivered each semester. The important thing for your teachers to know is that no segment can be chosen twice in a program. Whether there are 3 or 4 courses, each PSN and each CIP code only has one segment sheet, and no segment can be chosen more than once. So in semester 1, we may have 3 teachers listed here. And the same in semester 2. The names of the classes, so there will be 3 different classes. And then the segments that were taught in that particular semester. So let's say it was segment 2 and 4 and 6 and 8 and 10 and 12 were taught the first semester. Semester 2 actually has 3 different teachers that are teaching the second part of the program. So those teachers' names would go in here, and their class names would go in here. And the segments that they're doing then would have to be, if this were a one-year program, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. Note that no single number is used twice. Very important for you to remember. When you are checking over the segment sheets, look for that. Just go ahead and count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Yep, all 12 segments are there. They're all only used once. This segment sheet is correct. It's also very important to have your teachers sign that sheet, because the Office of Career and Technical Education is looking for verification that the teacher agrees with what is on that sheet, and that is the sheet that the person who puts your data into the CTE information system, CTEIS, has used to upload all of the data that it needs. That's the only way that your data can be accurate. If there is one way, there are actually about 2 or 3 major ways where you can get money recaptured. This is one of them. If you don't have the segments placed properly, you won't have any completers in your program. That's a long discussion, but it is very, very important that this sheet is correct. Here is another segment sheet, and this one is a 2-year segment sheet. Note that there is one thing that was not on the 1 year, and that would be the letter Q, right over here on the bottom right. That letter Q only happens if all of the segments 1 through 12 were chosen in the first year and taught in the first year. And then those students decided they wanted to come back for some more, maybe some interesting changes. Instead of coming into a general health science class, for instance, they may decide that they want to go specifically to be an optometrist, and you don't have an optometry class. So those students, because they are completers, because they have completed all 12 segments, that they have a 2.0 or a C or above, and they have taken the end of year assessment as required by the state if it's offered in that program area. All of those conditions must be met before that student can come back as a Q, and you will be funded for that student just as you are for the students who are taking the 1 through 12. So it's important that you make sure all of your ducks are in a row on this one. And I think one of the biggest problems that happens here is when the student may have gotten a C- one semester, or maybe they were absent when the test was given. All of that criteria must be in place before the student can be a Q. Make sure that's the case, because I assure you the computer in the CTEIS system will not forget. Now we're going to start looking at the CIP Self-Review. And I know some of you are thinking, well, it's about time. I hope you enjoyed the little navigation that we did through the site, because it's important for you to know what's available to you. In the CIP Self-Review, when you pull up My Programs, under the CIP Self-Review, you will see the name of all your programs, their program serial number, the school, and then you will see this little area that's called Started. Under there, you're going to see different dates, or you're going to see the word Review. The teacher cannot get into their CIP Self-Review until you have chosen to review that program. So you will have to click on the word Review, and the date for the day that you click will appear in that box. Once everything is completed in the CIP Self-Review, the finish date will show up over here. And that way you can see when the CIP Self-Review was started and when it was completed for every single one of your programs. This is your building summary. Now, if you are a CPID director, you will notice up here it says View CPID Summary, and we will show you the CPID summary in a moment. But this is an individual building summary. This is a copy of a CPID summary. This is the sheet that needs to go into the state for 20% of the CPID's programs every single year. 20% of the region's programs as well. So if you will look, you will see that in 2011-12, the radio and TV technology program was completed on 6/14. It was completed in 12/13 on 6/26. And then it was started in 2013-14 on 12/19. That will change to completed once that is completed and submitted. So that's true of all of your programs. It gives you a quick view. It shows which programs are included, and it shows the CPID number up here, the building, the CIP code, name of the program, the PSN, and then, of course, the years. When you are under My Programs and you are a teacher, you will see My Gap Analysis. I've blown the box up a little bit so that you can see that that is where it's located, over to the left underneath the names of all of the teachers in the PSN. Only the teacher can get to My Gap Analysis. This is not something that the administrator can complete. So they need to know where it is. And this is the electronic gap analysis, not the Excel sheets that I showed you under the Resources tab. Teachers must do one or the other, not both. But if they do the electronic gap analysis, there are a few tricks that they need to know. This is the electronic gap analysis, and it is simply a series of radio buttons over here next to the standard over here, which is also called the performance elements, remember. And next to that is a plan of improvement. And in that plan of improvement is first, what is the plan? Then who is doing that? And when will that be accomplished? All of that needs to happen if anyone puts clicks a radio button in either the N or the 1 area. All areas must be 2, 3, or 4 in the gap analysis in order to not generate a plan of improvement. So the minute that your teacher clicks an N or a 1, the plan of improvement will pop up and they will have to fill that in. There won't be a choice. The important thing that you need to know is, if you will note on the left where it says under the state PSN all the names of the teachers. In this particular PSN, there are 14 different teachers. Well, how many segment sheets do they do? How many gap analyses do they do? They do 1 segment sheet and 1 only. They do 1 gap analysis and 1 only. So they will choose either the electronic or the Excel gap analysis, and they will get together and they will do 1. This is not an easy task. It is something that they're going to have to do. There is no choice there. So make sure that also when they're doing their segment sheets, that they can teach those segments in a semester in any order that they choose, but they have to teach them within that semester. The same way with the gap analysis. They don't have to say in the gap analysis exactly when they're teaching each of these performance elements, but they must teach it at the same level as the other teachers. And that also is an important aspect. This is a copy of an Excel gap analysis. This is not the electronic one. Note that there seems to be a lot more columns, and indeed there is. First of all, you should note that all of the performance elements are over here. And over here are the 4321N that we saw in the electronic gap analysis. What we didn't see on the electronic gap analysis was a local task ID code. And if you do the Excel gap, that does need to be filled in. So how and in doing what are they teaching those performance elements? Now they can use coding, they can use module numbers, they can use book pages, but whatever they do, they have to demonstrate that in this area. Also, something you did not see on the electronic gap analysis was the post-secondary delivery. What normally happens is that a post-secondary person or two will come together with the teachers in the program, and they will look at these standards and they will decide if the courses that they're articulating have those standards in them. They will put a check mark. So, describe duties of production personnel. Does the course they're articulating have that in? Yes, it does. So we put a check. Analyze the objective of production activities. That's in there as well. So the post-secondary person will go down your gap analysis and make sure that those standards that are in the programs they're articulating are checked off. And that's what you have to do for that. In the columns next to that, we have ELA, math, all of the VPAA, pardon me, and all of the academic areas. That's where check marks go in the boxes next to those standards if they're teaching some ELA or math or VPAA in those standards. So that's the Excel gap analysis, and that's how it's different from the electronic one. When the teacher is using the CIP Self-Review, goes to Navigator and pulls up the CIP Self-Review. By the way, you'll notice on the left here, the name of this teacher is Test Teacher. And this test teacher is in Health Therapeutic Services. So when the test teacher went to Programs, up here in the tab, and clicked on that, and then that dropped down to say My Programs, this is what came up, Health Therapeutic Services. Now, if there are more than one teacher in that PSN and in that CIP code, you as the administrator must decide who the lead teacher is, because only one teacher is allowed to fill out the CIP Self-Review for all the teachers in that PSN, which means they have to get together, they have to put things in common folders, and they have to figure out who is going to be doing the upload. Only one teacher per PSN per CIP code. So the teacher who you have chosen to be the lead teacher in a PSN and CIP code will go to the CIP Self-Review, and the first thing after their profile, their user profile, will be CO1 Program Teacher Certification. Now, something that is very interesting, no one ever seems to read this, but it does give directions right here at the top of every area of the CIP Self-Review. And it says quite clearly, documentation to upload is listed below and depends on the individual situation. In most cases, only one of these evidences is required. They will tell you that over and over, because in the Office of Career and Technical Education, you may have noticed they don't have a lot of people there anymore, and they have to read every single one of the documents that you upload into the CIP Self-Review. It does not fare you well to upload too many documents that they don't need to look at. It only is frustrating for those consultants. It is important that you upload only the things that are critical and needed for a minimum compliance. Not for best practices, but for a minimum compliance. You will note here, next to copy of state licensure, there is something downloaded here. You can tell that because it's turned blue. Well, since this is therapeutic services, my guess is that is probably an RN license. When they upload the RN license, it is critical also that they take out all identifying characteristics except their name. So they really should make a copy of the certificate, then white out all of the identifying numbers, and then upload that, scan it, and upload that into Navigator. Now each teacher, and you'll note here there are 3 that are showing, each teacher will have to get into their personal profile on Navigator, and only they can do that, and they need to make sure that that's updated, and they need to upload the credentials that are here. They will not upload their teacher certification. That no longer is suggested, required, or even accepted. All of that information is in MOECS, M-O-E-C-S, and the OCTE consultant will go to MOECS to look for those credentials. So they should not be uploaded here. The trick is for those credentials that the teacher's name must match exactly the name on their certificate. So it is critical that in MOECS and on their state certificate that the name is the same. That is also the name they must put into the user profile here in Navigator. That way, the whole database talks to each other, and we will know that that teacher is properly certified. If their name does not come up because perhaps it's a maiden name instead of a married name for a female or something like that, then that teacher certification will have to be checked into carefully, and you are now on their list of having to check through things and put you that much closer to be a monitored program. Even if your credentials are proper and things are just messed up a little bit in the system, it's a good idea to have your teachers go to MOEX and check and make sure that their teacher certification is there, it is the proper one, it is not expired, etc., etc. When the teacher goes into Navigator, the first thing that will pull up for everyone, whether or not they are the designated lead teacher, will be the user profile. At the bottom of that user profile, it tells them what program they are scheduled to be in. Only you can change that under the Users tab. Under the Users tab, you can change what program those teachers are in. This one, for instance, it says that this teacher, this test teacher, is in Personal and Culinary Services. Well, we know that that is not true, that the teacher is actually in Health Sciences. So what we have to do is remove that. You will go over here, you can't quite see the whole word, but it's the beginning of the word remove on the right, and you will click remove to remove that. Now you have to add a program because every teacher has to have a program. So there's a little drop down arrow right here, and when you click that drop down arrow, all of the programs that are state approved in your building will be listed, and you can click on the right one to put in there. Then you need to make sure that you click the add program, and after that you need to really remember to hit that save, because if you don't click on the save, you will not save the changes that you just made. Now that test teacher will be listed as being in Health Science. I have put CO2, Program Teacher Professional Development, and CO6, which is right here, by the way, which is Program Advisory Committee, on the same page just to save space and time. They won't be on the same page. I mean, they won't be together like this in the CIP Self-Review. One will follow the other. But the important thing to note is that there are directions that says each teacher in the PSN must provide this information. That is critical. In CO2, all of the files need to be uploaded. They will be uploaded by one person, but they need professional development from all the teachers in that PSN. They will click on Add Evidence, and a box will pop up with a browse on it, and they will click on that to get them to their jump drive or their file on their computer, wherever they have saved this. And they'll click on that. It will pop in, they will hit save, and what you will end up with is a file that looks exactly like this one right up here. Now, we need to discuss the naming profile for each of these files. Naming protocol is critical. Normally, what we do is we put the teacher's last name, the date, and what the document is, and then perhaps even when the document expires. It depends on what document it is. If you do all of that, you will know what the document is. Your teacher will know what the document is, and the OCTE consultant will know what the document is. That becomes especially important next year, so that they don't have to open every single one of these files in order to see which ones they leave there and which ones they X off. And by doing that, I mean they actually click the X, and that will delete the file. So all of these files will carry over from this year to next year. They will stay in Navigator, and they will come over. So you need to know that, because the teachers will save so much time, you will save so much time, and so will the OCTE consultants. Now, one of the things that is not done here, all of these files are checked, but if you look way over to the left, you will see a yes and a no, and I'm circling them right now. It is very, very important that your teacher clicks the yes. If the teacher does not click that yes, a plan of improvement will be generated even if all of these wonderful files are over here on the right. So every single place where they can click a yes, they have to click a yes. If they click a no, a plan of improvement will be generated, and they will have to fill that out. So it is very important that they do that. Under CO2, the consultants at OCTE have made it very clear that that the teacher only has to pick one of these areas to upload a document for, not all of them. So have they done a professional development to stay current in all aspects of the program related industry, or effective integration and use of challenging academics and CTE, or provide relevant experience in the related business or industry? Any one of those will meet the criteria for PD. And honestly, the OCTE consultants do not want to see more than one. They want to see a current professional development activity that this teacher has completed. And in fact, now they actually do accept the professional development summaries from the school districts. So that is a change, and a positive one, I think. In CO6 Program Advisory Committee, there are certain things that the teachers have to have in there. They have to have the minutes. They have to have a roster. They have to have an agenda. They have to have a sign-in sheet. Now, they're really being a little more lax about the sign-in sheet, but the committee members who were present have got to be in the minutes with the affiliation, and it's really much easier to have a sign-in sheet and then just put the name of the person in the minutes and not have to worry about putting the affiliation in there as well. Because the sign-in sheet and the roster can actually be the same thing. And remember, the person from business and industry has to be the chair. There can't be a teacher or a school district personnel cannot be the chair of an advisory committee. There need to be 2 of those a year. So if you look under advisory committee evidence, you will see that this top one right here, if you can read it because it's quite small, says November 2012 MCF Nursing CNA Advisory Board Meeting Breakout Session Minutes. And then there's 2012-13 Advisory Chair Sign-Off. And then there's an agenda. And then there's a breakout agenda. And there's dates after that. Copy of Health Advisory List. This isn't standard naming protocol the way I'm trying to train my teachers now, but it's close enough so that I can tell what it means and what year it's from and those kinds of things. So this is not bad, it is not standard, it's much nicer for you and your building if you standardize this. And on the teacher timeline that I've talked about in the past, we actually show good naming protocol for these files to help the teachers out. Also note that the teacher has checked the yes here, and here, and here. Now, something that is particular to this year that has not happened in the past. All of the files came over this year into the new CIP Self-Review, but they didn't all come over into the right spots. So, for instance, this area talks about documentation of a minimum of 2 meetings each school year, and it looks like there's nothing over in this area right here. But that's not true. There are 2 meetings up here. There's an agenda, there's an advisory committee, there's the presentation. This one's for May. The other one is for November. All of that is present there. It just popped into the wrong box. What's going to happen is the lead teacher here is going to have to press the X and delete all of the files from this upper box and re-upload those files in the second box. There is no other way to do it. It's not a simple cut and paste from one to the other. That can't happen. It's got to be done where you actually X out of the file, delete the file, and then make sure that you upload it into the next box. So your teachers, even if they think they've got everything in there, they're going to have to reposition those files this year. After this year, they will come back automatically into the proper box. But this year, because things have changed, they will not. So it's important for them to know that and for you to look for that. One thing that you will see at the base of the CIP Self-Review, under General Comments, is you will see a Save button. You will also show a Print Plan of Improvement Report, which I would definitely do if I were the administrator of a building. And also there's a Show Missing Information button. Now certainly you'll want to do the Save first, then you'll want to do the Show Missing Information, and then you'll want to print the Plan of Improvement, and hopefully there's not one if there's no missing information. If there were some pieces of information that were missing, however, you could go over down to the lower right. You will see a Communicate button. And if you click on that, a box will pop up where you can actually write a note to the teacher, and literally that will go right to the teacher and tell them that there's a note for them in MCCTE Navigator that they need to look at. They will come in here and see what you've written, that there's something that's missing, and they can then upload that, and they can actually respond to you and tell you that, oh yes, I've put that in there now and it's all ready to go, without you having to go out of Navigator and then get their email address and email them privately. You can put it right in here, and it's a done deal. I did not go over all of the other areas of the CIP Self-Review. We can do that separately, but we have a very detailed list of the things that go into the C10, C13, and C16, which are the other 3 areas of the CIP Self-Review. So rather than take up your time in this video presentation, I think for you to look at the teacher timeline is really the thing to do, and that CIP Self-Review will then be complete for your teacher. The CIP Self-Review is a long process to train on. And I will tell you, we've taken a good deal of time with teachers to try to get them on board with everything. It's just as important that you, the administrator, are on board with what needs to happen here, because it really is you that is going to look at each of these CIP self-reviews, determine whether or not it's complete before you send it on to your regional administrator. It's important that your programs look as good as they truly are to the state of Michigan, that you show them what best practices look like, and that they see the good things that we're doing in the state of Michigan in career and technical education, not just the problems. So hopefully this has helped you out. There will be other videos that will not be quite so long. We hope to do one on CO1, another on CO2, a third on CO6, another on C10 and C13 and C16. That way you can actually go to those individual videos, which I hope will not be longer than 10 minutes, any one of them, and we can you'll have that as a resource. Otherwise, please feel free to email me, and I will answer you just as quickly as I possibly can, and hopefully you will be happy with our service, because we are here to serve. Thank you so much for all your time.